Thousands of people were killed last week when devastating floods caused by Storm Daniel's heavy rainfall hit Libya, a failed state that is still recovering from years of civil war. Record rainfall was recorded in the hours leading up to the floods on September 10, with winds reaching 80 miles per hour in some parts of the country. For many, this was just another downpour, but for the 90,000 residents of the Mediterranean port city of Derna, it became a catastrophe they had to fend off by themselves. Two poorly maintained dams in the outskirts of the city failed, sending millions of cubic meters of floodwater all through downtown and washing entire neighborhoods into the sea. While the disaster has been widely blamed on climate change-induced violent weather, survivors and experts point at the complicity of local authorities in what they say was a fatal failure of public infrastructure during decades of corruption and neglect. Here's how unusually heavy rainfall destroyed the city. 3-day rainfall totals as of September 12. In the days leading up to the disaster, authorities began shutting down some roads. The storm kicked off in the country's northwest on Sept, 9, getting stronger by the hour and slowly moving eastward. Libya's National Meteorological Agency issued warnings days in advance, and Derna's now-ousted mayor called for evacuations. The storm brought torrential rains that broke records, surpassing 16 inches in some areas, and water began to accumulate behind two dams near Derna. Flooding destroyed two dams in the Wadi Derna Valley. The 243-foot Abu Mansa Dam, some 8.6 miles from the city, was capable of holding up to 22.5 million cubic meters of water. This was more than 10 times the capacity of the lower dam, which was much closer to the Derna. The two dams had suffered major damage in the 1980s. Libya's General Prosecutor Al-Sadiq al-Sawra said last week during a news conference, adding that a government study a decade later revealed cracks and fissures in their structures. Subsequent restoration efforts failed to launch despite a growing number of reports about the lack of upkeep and continued calls for maintenance. Al-Sawra said officials would investigate the collapse of the two dams, as well as the allocation and management of maintenance funds. Before the flooding disaster, residents were confident the dams would hold, as they always had. Some officials were also confident, with the Interior Ministry's Security Committee ordering a curfew to be lifted on September 11, a directive that contradicted earlier. Flood damage in the port city of Derna. Thinking the worst was over, residents emerged to clean up the roads. Destruction of Derna, but around 3 a.m. it became clear the lower dam had burst too, sending another wave that dwarfed many buildings and swallowed up people, cars, homes and bridges. You could see people on buildings with their phones lit up, shouting for help, but no one could do anything. And then suddenly one of the buildings would collapse and be washed away to the sea. Youssef Al-Shari, an education department officer, said.